You know, you hear a lot of gross rumours about politicians in this job. And you always just dismiss it as, yeah, rumours or whatever. But if all of them come out at once, you start thinking, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a room in Parliament House that if someone opened it, all these midgets gag, run out. Scott Morrison chasing after them. Hey, where you going, Barry? Claudia? Cameras on him. I was not aware of a room full of gagged midgets. Well, why does your shirt say, I love gagging midgets? I don't accept that it says that. I've been trying to process this for the past couple of weeks. I have never seen the press as rabid as they currently are. This is the press. This is Scott Morrison. And I'm including Labor politicians when I say this. Don't you think that Rudd and Gillard are currently looking at Scott Morrison getting ripped apart day after day thinking, glad I'm not him. What's truly remarkable about it as well is this has caught the Liberals blindsided. They do not have a crisis management strategy for the press when the Labor Party's entire strategy for the press is a crisis management strategy. But Scott Morrison's is, here's the drop for the day, see ya, I'm just gonna have a nap. Then all of a sudden, Jesus, someone got up on the wrong side of the bed. He's got nothing. No way of dealing with it. It's glorious. This would not be happening if there was a Labor politician fronting the same hostile press. They'd probably just be like, another day. Slightly less shoes were thrown at me today. So, in this environment, he's flailing badly, doesn't know how to answer the questions. Because it's just, the way that I'm always putting this is, I always imagine that the Labor Party is kind of like an animal that evolved in Africa. It's used to, getting chased by cheetahs and don't even know if they're from Africa, but a bunch of animals that can rip you to pieces. But the Liberals, I think they're an animal that evolved in Australia. It's a koala. It's a really cuddly sloth that all of a sudden has a bunch of house cats chasing after it. And the reason it's Cats the Musical is because it's a lot of ABC journos ripping their heads off, and all they give a fuck about usually is musicals. Now all of a sudden, they care about the national interest. Isn't that insane? It doesn't matter what the Liberal Party does. No climate change plan for the last 10 years. We'll just smugly sit on the book club. That's fine. Completely degraded the education system to a third world level. Yeah, well, my kids go to Ascot. Criminal underinvestment in infrastructure, and the infrastructure that they do invest in, they give to companies at hugely inflated contracts. Well, how am I supposed to know about that? The ABC's in the city and I'm in Paddington. But then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, massive crusaders for women. That they know. The 6 years prior to that, where they gutted domestic violence funding, privatised a bunch of domestic violence institutions, got rid of family court just recently, still haven't heard shit about that. Massive press run about Scott Morrison's domestic violence summit, which, you know what's really interesting about that summit? If you look closely at it, he's crossed out Bill Shorten's name and put his name at the top. That's right, that summit is exactly what Bill Shorten suggested in 2015. Scott Morrison's coming out, dusting it out of the shelf. Yeah, it was my idea, there you go. Press didn't give a shit about the summit when it was Bill Shorten suggesting it, so just remember, this is going to be written down in history as a Watergate moment, and it really is a Watergate moment. This will be the end of the Morrison government, and the press will write it up as them standing up for women, but just remember this one point. It's not about standing up for women, it's about standing up for women within their elite bubbles. That's what really turned this tide. All the virtue signalling that you see in the press, deafened by the fact that they had 8 years to get rid of this horrible government against women, but they didn't. Why are they doing it now? This is the big question. I've been thinking about it a lot, and apart from the obvious thing that it's not an election cycle, and so newspapers still need to get eyeballs attached to them, and I think that this has just turned into such a spectacle that it is selling a lot of newspapers at the moment. Started asking a few people that I know. I'm going to have to be really, really careful about this. I can't get specific at all, because we're getting into territory that's very suable, but what's really happening behind the scenes is that Scott Morrison is a lot more unstable than I originally thought he was. I thought, as he is written up in the press, this infallible victor of the Liberal Party that won the unwinnable election. The reality of the situation is he won the unwinnable election by 2 seats. And then Craig Kelly, the legend, saw all this storm brewing, said, "See ya," jumped out with a parachute. Yeah, la 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 la, back to Hughes I go. Then there was Andrew Laming, who, if they had a healthy majority, do you think they'd be saying, no, it was disgusting what he was doing, but he's staying around to the next election, don't worry about that. No, it's just because they don't have the numbers. And so Scott Morrison is in this very precarious predicament that I was not really aware of. This is why corruption has just exploded in the last term of the Liberal government. It is because you have 76 extremely self-interested cunts in the Liberal Party. There's nothing really holding them together like there is in the Labor Party. At least in the Labor Party, the self-service is also, it's a bit narrowed out by the fact that all of them think, I think that schools should be properly funded. Everyone in the fucking Liberal Party is just like, I don't give a fucking shit if schools are properly funded. I'll just teach them online. The internet doesn't work? Fuck it. I'll move to another country. I'll just get rich enough that I can leave this shit up. So you've got 70 of those just coming into Scott Morrison's office daily saying, I want a $50 million pork barrel for my election. I want you to give this highway to my brother. Scott Morrison has no other choice but to say, okay, 50 million? Well, I got off lightly on this one. I got to go to Barnaby next, and he's asking for 2 billion. Well, okay, there you go, Barnaby. He has just been like that ever since the election in 2019. Yeah, he won the unwinnable election, but he won also a poison chalice, which is that he is trying to keep together 70 people who have nothing keeping them together. It's a really difficult position to be in. I almost feel sorry for the guy. I'm loving it now that I know that dynamic is happening behind, but damn, I don't know how you govern in that situation. And that's obviously what's happening here. They can't govern, can they? Disgraceful. Permit me to explain in further detail. There's 4 factions in the Liberal Party. There's a WA faction, there's a Tony Abbott faction, there's the Christian faction, which 3 guesses where Scott Morrison is. The Tony Abbott faction. No, he's in the Christians. And then there's the moderates. Now, the moderates are obviously a bit pissed off with Scott Morrison. He was a bit of a peacetime candidate after that other guy that left, Turnbull. Turnbull, when he left, one of the last things that he did was make sure that, the next Prime Minister in line was a Christian and not a crazy. So he kind of got the wets behind Morrison, and then you had Gurman using the WA Libs, who were the real power brokers, because those other 3 kind of have some sort of ideology. It's kind of like, the Christians like, religious freedoms, and the crazies like, I don't know, more religious freedom than the Christians. And then you have the wets that like silk ties. But the WA Libs, the only thing that they have is like, yeah, West Australia represent. And they are the ones that are real power brokers. Now, who was keeping them in check? Was Gorman. But Cormann f***ed off to make OECD figures unreliable. So this whole time that I've been saying, number 1, OECD, you watch in 6 months' time, all of a sudden, I bet you will see the Liberal Party go from the 32nd worst managers on earth of the economy, all right, up to number 7. Don't you reckon? He's just going to fudge the numbers. That's my theory anyway. Pretty irrelevant to what I'm talking about. Sorry to distract. When you go to the West Australian Liberals now, they're all fractured. They don't really have a leader anymore. So apparently there is a free-for-all. Now, there are some ambitious people in the Liberal Party that I can't really name them, but I think that you can guess where they are because of their positions that they hold. And they want Scott Morrison out. Not because he's doing a bad job for them. He did win them an election that they shouldn't have won. He's doing a terrific job in terms of COVID and handling the press. Right up until now, that has been his saving grace. He's always been able to say to the rest of the party, I know how to handle optics. And credit to him, he does know how to handle them. He is a genius. His marketing training, even though he was shit at marketing when he was in those jobs, but whatever, he at least understands it. While the rest of them understand, I don't know, putting a sold sticker on a f***ing real estate poster out the front of a house. The rest of them don't have those skills. And so he was always propped out to that position because he's the front man, he's the star, he knows how to direct the press. So I think that what has happened behind the scenes, this is what, from what I can gather, after the Porter stuff was leaked, they realised this is not going down well for Scott Morrison. We found a chink in the armour. And so all of Scott Morrison's enemies within the Liberal Party have realised we can tear this fucker down. Because he seemed infallible. Won an election he shouldn't have won. The most popular Prime Minister I think Australia has ever had when you look at preferred Prime Minister. And then all of a sudden, he's just flailing in front of the cameras.
Shortly after giving this very emotional speech about the need to look after women and to try and ensure that they feel safe and protected in workplaces and the community, Scott Morrison went on to say in this press conference, he actually lashed out at a News Corp journalist who questioned him about the behaviour of Coalition staff.
He's never done that before. He had his little bushfire moment, but he recovered extremely quickly. I don't know if he's going to be able to recover from this one because the press is dirty on him now. He can't do anything right in front of them. And so I think that they've realised that hitting him on scandals is the way to destabilise Scott Morrison. He really doesn't know how to answer those questions. Everything is just like, no, I don't accept that. Well, what do you think about it? Well, you should look at yourself in the mirror, mate. You know? There's a lot of that, and that's just making the press angry, being like, me, you. And so there is just this negative feedback loop that is happening, and I think that, and in fact, actually, I'm going to brag here, but I know that behind the scenes, Scott Morrison's enemies are backgrounding, they're providing quotes to the press, they're providing information, and the reason that that is allowed to be published, apparently, this is what I hear is happening behind the scenes, Fairfax, Murdoch Press, both of them realise this isn't an election cycle. They don't really care who the head is when they front into the next election. And in fact, I heard from a little birdie, the Murdoch Press is willing to change sides. Yes. 2019 was a message to the Labor Party to say, get rid of Bill Shorten. And that is because Bill Shorten was being very adversarial to Murdoch. In this election cycle, the Labor Party hasn't said anything about Murdoch, and that's a very deliberate strategy on their end. And I think that Murdoch has registered that as they know their place. Obviously, he knows, like the rest of Australia, that the Liberals have f***ed up beyond redemption, and the level of corruption and the level of, I don't know, just general sliding in all national statistics that are happening under the Liberals. Because look at the shit show that is happening right now. They are trying to tear down the only Prime Minister that I think they have that is talented enough to maybe even possibly win a fourth term. It's that guy. He is a great communicator in front of the press, and they have figured out a way to make him completely toxic. So if they're doing that, I mean, at some point, they're no longer tenable, are they? And now that Murdoch got his little sweetheart deal in with Facebook and Google, like, I think he's set. So what I have heard is that the Murdoch press are being a lot more friendly to the Labor Party. And this was even before this huge spiel was happening now. They're willing to change sides because they kind of see Albo as another hawk figure and they can live with that. They just want to make sure that the Labor Prime Minister that is in is not going to be openly hostile to Murdoch. That's what's happening on the press level. I don't know what's going to happen to Scott Morrison, but I can't imagine, and this is just a prediction now, this is getting very Young Turksy. He's got 6 weeks to go. I don't really know, but honestly, I don't see a way out for him. I did not realise that he doesn't actually have that much support within the Liberal Party. All of them are just trying to claw at him, and I for what? A different little fucking prefect badge? I don't know why. So he doesn't really have their support. The press kind of has this take him or leave him attitude, which is especially highlighted now. And at the very least, I think that what has happened to the Liberal Party internally is they've realised, we no longer are the benefactors of the press. And that's freaking them out. Now, there are some very skilled operators within it that still are, directing the ire. But most of them have no fucking clue about how to handle a hostile press. It's never happened to them before. Anyway, that's behind the scenes of what's happening. I thought it would just be interesting to share with you what I have heard in very, very general terms. I really wish that I could delve into this more, but yeah, I've been gobsmacked for the last couple of weeks thinking, how does this work? Like, this shouldn't be happening. I've never ever witnessed a press that is mean to a Liberal Prime Minister. Even in the Kevin Rudd days, they liked Kevin Rudd, I suppose, towards the end because he was just such a charismatic figure that came out of nowhere. But still to John Howard, they were like, yeah, you had a really good innings, mate. Yeah, we'll shine you off. Good on you. It's never been this, like, throwing tomatoes at someone in a medieval galley. That's what's happening at the moment. So anyway, that's all I've really got to add. Thank you so much for listening to this ramble, and I'll see you next week. Share it around.
Please share and comment below. Comment.